His work's been featured on NPR's TED Radio Hour, Harvard Business Review, Forbes, Fast Company, and The Tim Ferriss Show. He's spoken at the Pentagon, Microsoft, Stanford, Carnegie Mellon, HEC Paris, and the Mental Health America. So basically, Charlie knows how to play in a big, fancy way. Please welcome Charlie Hoehn. Virtual claps for everybody.
Thank you all. It's good to see y'all. And thank you, Elise. And thanks for the invite. So I'm excited to be talking with y'all about how to unlock creativity through the power of play. So is that taking up the full screen for everybody? Is it working? Cool. Awesome. All right. So I want to start off with a story about a guy named Bas Ording. So many years ago, I believe it was in 1980, Bas showed up at Apple headquarters, and he had his first job interview with Apple. He bombed. HR just straight up didn't like him, and he knew he bombed the interview. And as he was on his way out, feeling dejected, he happened to run into Steve Jobs in the hallway. He ran up to Steve and he said, kind of clumsily and awkwardly, "Steve, I have this idea I want to show you." And he pulled out his laptop, and Steve's just kind of waiting like, okay, who is this guy? And he demonstrates the dock magnification. This was way back then, right? Steve looked at his demo and said, "My God," and hired him right on the spot. And Bas went on to have an incredibly prolific career at Apple. And in fact, all of us are very familiar with his work. And I'd imagine 90% of you use his work every day with the slides unlock feature, the original iOS keyboard, the little pinhead that zooms in when you're trying to select text. Bas ended up becoming a legend at Apple, and he truly got to get paid to play and be creative throughout his career. And he's currently at Tesla doing similar work for them. And what I'm here, of course, to talk with you all about is what I've learned in researching and experiencing how to unlock creativity specifically through the power of play. And I'm going to go over three big steps or shifts or whatever you want to call them today with you. First, I'm going to give you a quick background of my story. So this was me many years ago alongside the author Tim Ferriss. This was our first weekend together, and he and I ended up working together for 3 years. Tim is the author of The 4-Hour Workweek, The 4-Hour Body, Tools of Titans. He's one of the most creative people I've ever met, and certainly seen as one of the most creative people currently working today. And how I got that job is relevant to this talk, and I'll break it down for you real quick here. It's the tag method, and it's similar to what Bas did. I picked a target, I audited their business and their work to find out the holes in what they were doing, and then I gave them a gift. Now, why did I do that? I spent months trying what everyone else tries to get you to do when it comes to work. They tell you, apply to every job, just send out your resume, show up, try and impress them, do things seriously, do what everyone else does, do it how we've always done it. That didn't work for me at all. And I'd imagine if any of you have been in the job market semi-recently, you know that it's ineffective. And what I found was as soon as I shifted to a place of play where I said, I'm just going to do the thing as though I'm already working my dream job. I'm just going to pretend that I have my dream job. How am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to pick who it's for. I'm going to figure out a problem that I can solve using my skills, and then I'm going to give them a gift, just like Bas. And so shifting over to that mindset of abundance and let's pretend that we already have the circumstances we want, changed my life. And it changed a lot of other people's lives. For years, I was helping other people get paid to play, like Michael, who he came to me as a board consultant and just really disliking his work. And we ended up helping him get a job running the philanthropy channel for Mr. Beast. Is anyone familiar with Mr. Beast? He's 100+ million subscribers on YouTube, one of the biggest creatives on the planet currently. And I would argue that everyone can come to their work with that same energy and see tremendous results with it. And so fast forwarding a bit in that timeline, I ended up getting very burnt out. And you can read the story if you'd like, but it didn't have to do with Tim as much as it had to do with me, where I shifted out of play mode at a certain point. And I went back to results, serious productivity. And all of a sudden, I found myself incredibly burned out. I ended up, in the hospital, and I spent about 1.5 years trying to get myself out of this state, doing everything that healthcare providers tell you to do, and nothing worked. Nothing. Until I came across this book called Play by Dr. Stuart Brown, which I'm sure some of you might be familiar with. It's an excellent book, but what surprised me about it was this quote: "The opposite of play isn't work, it's depression." And that gave me a little aha moment of, oh, if I deprive myself of play, much like if I deprive myself of sleep, it's going to cause issues, right? And so I wondered, if I add play back into my life a little bit, how will that affect me? And I realized from that book as well that, when I was a kid, I wasn't concerned with results. I wasn't concerned so much with status or making money. I was concerned with having fun. I was concerned with connecting with people and doing work that I enjoyed and that was exciting, that I was intrinsically motivated by. And so a little bit each day, I started to add play back into my life. The first thing I did was I started adding catch meetings instead of coffee meetings. And I noticed almost immediately that I felt better, lighter, more joyful, more relaxed. And then I added more and more play. And eventually I signed up for improv comedy classes, and which sounds like a nightmare to somebody who might be struggling with burnout or anxiety. But the reality was, improv taught me what I knew as a kid, which was you can make something of anything that's handed to you. Kids enthusiastically say yes to whatever's handed to them. If you hand a 3-year-old a pretend, like nothing in your hand, and you say, here's a gift, open it up, they will go through the act of opening it up immediately. And that's what I learned. It got me out of being so serious all the time. And I remember, I'll never forget this one scene where these two people came out and they did an interaction with each other, and it was just kind of awkward and clumsy to watch. It wasn't that pleasant. I couldn't figure out why. And then the instructor said, okay, try it again, except this time you like each other. And they did it again, and it was magic to watch. It was delightful. And I realized that energy, that just enthusiasm of choosing to show up in the moment as though you know and trust and have faith that you can make it great. That is truly the energy of play. And so choosing enthusiastically to say yes to whatever life hands to you was really the key that I walked away with. Justin Kahn, the creator of Twitch, had a great quote. He said, at the end of the day, all of us are trying to figure out how to feel like a kid again. And there were a lot of bad words to being a kid, I'm sure. But we all remember these sensations at times that, hey, life was play. People around me were playmates and the world was a playground. Does that resonate with anybody? Yeah. So I want to do a quick breakout. Let's play a really quick game, and it's called Story Spine. And this will just get us back into that energy a little bit. So this is going to be the slide I'll share during the breakout room. But if Julie's running tech or whoever's running tech, if we could do the breakout room now, that'd be great. I'll explain it real quick. This is the game. You're each going to take a turn saying one of these lines and filling it in. So once upon a time, fill it in. Next person. And every day, fill it in. Until one day, and then you're each going one by one. And because of that, and because of that, and because of that, until finally, and ever since that day, you're building a story together. That is the aim, right? There's one rule that I'll give you, which is keep it happy, healthy, sexy. No characters getting sick and decrepit and all these things. Like happy, healthy, sexy, keep it in that zone and have fun with it. So can we start the breakout room now? So it looks like we're getting everybody back in. How did that go for everybody? Just real quick in the chat. Were there any observations or takeaways? Great fun, surprisingly easy. Yes, Gabriella. Humans are born storytellers. Oh, weird. Slide didn't show up. Huh. Hilarious. Yes, it is. It's pretty fun. Oh. Yeah. It scared me, but I laughed so much. Yeah, I mean, it's the beauty of play, right? It's a vulnerable act, but it's supposed to be fun. So thank you guys for participating in that. And I'm going to share my screen again. If any of you have little kids, I would highly recommend screenshotting this slide and using it and either playing the game with them or telling them a story in this structure. They'll be spellbound, though I will warn you, I ended up telling stories every single night for like 9 months after I started this because they were in high demand with my daughters. So moving on, let's get into the meat of it. How to unlock creativity through the power of play. So step one is really changing your mindset to thinking that work is play. Work can be play. So let's get into what I mean by that. So kids are not fools. They're pretty smart. Kids now dream of being professional YouTubers rather than astronauts, study finds. And I remember talking with a CEO about this, and he was just so upset by this. He's like, "Oh, China's the only country that like cares about, engineering and math and these serious professions. They don't care about being on YouTube." And I was like, "Man, I hate to break it to you. China doesn't have YouTube." If they knew about being a YouTuber, the kids would be all over this because kids want to play and have fun. And what's been interesting is over the last century, every time there's been a significant technological advance, most recently, right, with AI and ChatGPT, the prediction is always we're going to work less. And they have been wrong 100% of the time. We always work more. And we can argue that, hey, we grew up in a post-industrial, post-agricultural, Protestant country, and so we all have these weird, messed up work ethics. Or we can remember that humans, in our brains, we are hardwired. We have circuitry for play. Biology would have pruned that away as we got into adulthood because biology is very efficient. We have that neural circuitry for a reason. Play is essential. This is from the book, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. She said, most of us harbor a secret belief that work has to be work and not play, and that anything we really want to do must be considered frivolous and be placed a distant second. This is not true. And I have found this to be the case with many, many people. And this is from another book. The name is escaping me, but I'll share it with you guys later. They found that the strongest motivation for work is play. The strongest indicator for peak performance is play, because play is the only one that it is intrinsic. It is the work itself is enough for the person. It is joyful. It's an opportunity for them to master something they care about. It makes them feel free. So this is why I believe you should not start with why. You should start with play to find your play and your team's play. So what is the formula for work is play? There's three main components to it: freedom, mastery, and connection. You have to have a sense of autonomy. You have to have a sense that you are free to do the work in the manner that you believe is right and best for you. This is why I believe a huge contributing factor to the Great Resignation was all the bosses calling their people back into the office and being like, hey, we want to micromanage you. And they're like, we don't want that. We experience freedom. We're not going to let that go away. Mastery, I would argue, is potentially the most important, which is, are you using a skill set that you enjoy mastering? Is this a game that you want to continue leveling up in? I've been doing video editing for 20 years. I meet video editors all the time who are like, I can't stand video editing. I'm like, don't do it. I love it. It's awesome. It's the most fun for me. And if you're in a seat where you really want to master the skill, it will become play for you, whether you're in finance or a creative field or teaching, whatever. And then connection. This is maybe the most challenging one, with everything shifting to remote, people feeling isolated. I heard somebody mention that. But you need a sense of connection to the people around you and a feeling that they are also in a setting where they're mastering the skills that they care about, where they're free to do the work and not being micromanaged. So we'll dive deeper into this concept in a bit here, but I want to give some case studies here. Thomas Edison totally changed all of our lives. I never did a day's work in my life. It was all fun. While I was working on a recent book, Play It Away, I kept noticing when I came across people who've been the most creative, most prolific, they all tended to view their work in this light. J.K. Rowling, who raised the literacy rate around the world, I just write what I wanted to write. I write what amuses me. It's totally for myself. Her work has reached hundreds of millions of people, and she did it for her. Steven Spielberg, I dream for a living. Matt Groening of The Simpsons, I found child's play was the stuff I like to do, so I still do it as an adult. Stan Lee, who created all our favorite superheroes. When you work with people whom you like and you admire because they're so good at what they do, it doesn't feel like work. It's like you're playing, which goes back to freedom, mastery, connection. And finally, Mark Twain. The work that is really a man's own work is play and not work at all. When we talk about the great workers of the world, we really mean the great players of the world. And I believe it was Picasso who said, in every child is a genius. The challenge is to maintain or protect that genius as they become an adult. And what drove me crazy when I started seeing this thread was, how do we not have more great players of the world? Could everybody be a great player of the world if they were actually on a path to play? So I'm curious, when you trace back in your career where you started, what was the play that led to your career today? Type in the chat real quick, just a sentence. Like, what do you remember was the play that originally got you started down this path, when it used to be, or potentially still is fun, but like when it was pure play for you? Think back on that for a sec. And it's Elise, if you wouldn't mind reading some of these off, because I just have kind of a tough time with chat and the keynote, it's a little tricky.
Yeah, you bet. So there are all kinds of answers in here. Somebody, Gemma says make believe and dressing up. Katie Hill says research. Research is play for Katie. Kristen loves to draw. Niels likes coding a game. So you get into engineering when you code actual games, creative writing. Stacy says she got into her career by playing school with the neighborhood kids.
Nice.
Fun. All kinds
Awesome.
of things. More computer games, more being this radio DJ in the community.
Yeah. So if you want to dive deeper on that, some people really struggle with this, and a useful exercise is to do your play history. So to journal about what were the activities that you repeatedly and voluntarily turned to when you were growing up, that no one was judging you, no one was forcing you, no one was paying you. You were just doing them because. And then just jot down as many of those activities as you can. Those were what you were intrinsically motivated to do. Those were your play. And so I'd encourage you, it can be a life-changing exercise. It was for me. I'd encourage you to do it if you can at some point. In further reflection, these aren't necessarily things that I want us to dive into in the chat. These are more for reflecting after this keynote. So feel free to screenshot it if you'd like, but what work would you choose if you had to do it for free? People say, what would you do if you had $1 million? Try the reverse. What would you do if you knew for a fact you were not going to get paid? You knew it was just intrinsically motivated. What stands in the way of your freedom currently? Your mastery, your connection? How might you be able to clear those things away? And what would your career look like if you and your team were great players? How does that change things? So that's really step one, is getting your head around the concept that work is play. It can be play. It does not have to be work. It does not have to be a serious, there's work and there's play. There's a strict division. There's a great story about John Gallo getting fired by Henry Ford for smiling too much. There's we come from that world, right? We've inherited a lot of these nonsense beliefs about what work should be and what play should be. And I'd encourage you to believe that there doesn't need to be this artificial divide, that it can all be play. So step two is recognizing and reinforcing that coworkers are playmates. So I want to give you a story about this. So I am over here on the left. This is a company I've worked with for 6 years. They were ranked the #1 company culture in America by Entrepreneur Magazine. They've won dozens of culture awards. They're considered one of the leading companies in terms of building a healthy, supportive company culture. And that's why I've worked with them for so long. And these two are responsible for that culture. The guy on the left is Tucker. The guy on the right is Javon. Tucker is the co-founder of the company, and Javon is the CEO. And they could not be more different. Tucker is truly a genius. He's off the charts in terms of IQ. He came up with the idea for the company, which is to help people write books without having to type. And they've done over 1,200 books at this point over the last 6 years. And Tucker comes from, he graduated Duke with honors and all this stuff. Javon literally grew up in the slums of Dayton, Ohio. His dad was a pimp and drug dealer, literally. His mom was an orphan. He doesn't know where his last name came from. His education couldn't be further from Tucker's. He always felt like the most foolish person in the room. Now, I want to tell a story about Tucker and Javon. I would do play workshops with our team for team building exercises to boost our creativity. Writing books is a very creative act. And so you have to be emotionally comfortable and vulnerable and very connected with your team. what I found fascinating was Tucker never came to these workshops. And in brainstorming sessions as well, and I love Tucker, by the way. I love both these guys. They're both phenomenal human beings who are really remarkable. And it's not a criticism, it's an observation. But I noticed when we would do brainstorming activities, for instance, Tucker, Javon would sit back quiet and he would ask questions. Tucker, as ideas would come, he would criticize them and be like, that won't work because of this. And he was kind of the source of genius. And Javon came to these workshops. The CEO would continually make a fool of himself. And he was always on our level. And the reality is, everyone at the company, as much as they admired and respected Tucker, they were afraid of him. Javon won the best CEO in Austin, and he ended up recently winning the Entrepreneur of the Year award. So, why do I tell this story? There is, at companies, if you want play to actually take root, it starts with leadership. It has to. Everybody models the behavior of leaders. They look at them and see what is socially acceptable and what is not. And if a leader refuses to be vulnerable, refuses to get down on the level of the people that they are working/playing with, the game doesn't feel right. It never feels fair. And there's always an air of walking on eggshells and fear of the person who refuses to play at the top. And so there's a bunch of lessons I want to go through on how to apply this. What you have to understand is that I love this headline. Study finds that playfulness is the most attractive quality ever. And it is actually true. It is hardwired in us to be attracted to playful people. In general, for men, it communicates safety. You're going to be safe to other members of the tribe, to the kids. You're safe to play with the kids. For women, it often communicates vitality, liveliness, right? And these are very attractive qualities. Both sexes list sense of humor, fun-loving, and playful among the most important characteristics they look for in a potential long-term partner. This includes work. So, my wife and I have been together for 7 years, and we totally connected because of play. Like, we came together because of play. We were attracted to each other's playful qualities. And these are two of my favorite pictures of my wife. And she would totally kill me if she knew I was sharing these, so no one tell her. But the one on the left is obviously her just kind of goofing off. The one on the right is she was so hungry that she she went into a grocery store, grabbed ribs, and ate them in a parking lot. And she was crying, laughing while she was doing it, just making fun of herself. And I just so adored that quality of her laughing at herself and just being playful about the situation. This is one of her favorite pictures of me, where I found I had extra dog poop bags in my pocket, and I just made them into a tie. And so this is important, because in this book, The 4 Habits of Joy-Filled Marriages, which, by the way, their number one habit, see if you can guess, play. This book talks about what a fear bond looks like versus a joy bond. And a fear bond is very common in workplaces that are not healthy. Smiling is rare. Hiding emotions is common. Wearing masks for fear that people, I have this whole chat in front of it. We'll be happy to see if you act like yourself. Isolation becomes normal. Shutting down when problems arise. Treating someone who should be a friend more like an enemy. Does this vibe with anybody? Does anybody recognize this from a workplace? Yeah. That's an environment of fear. An environment of joy is characterized by several key traits: lots of smiles, positive feelings from being together or thinking about being together, the security to act like yourself around the other person, an ability to connect safely, and the sense that you are with your people. Do you know there is only one way to create a joy bond, and it is through playing together? You cannot have a joy bond unless you have played together. And so this is why it's so critical in the workplace to value and enable play with each other, because the joy bond cannot take place without it. And so you can't really have this sense that your coworkers are your playmates without this. Because deep down inside, each of us still have that inner child that wants to connect. It just becomes difficult as we become adults and all the nonsense that goes on with our ego. So how can leaders fix this? I think the simple solution is to be willing to play the fool. So I am not asking you to be Michael Scott from The Office and to create chaos and just act ridiculous or make jokes or goof around or anything like that. I'm not asking you to do that. I'm asking you to be more like Stephen Gillett. Stephen, I spoke with a couple months ago. He is the former CEO of Best Buy, the former CTO of Starbucks. He was an executive at Google. The guy's resume is ridiculous, right? And I asked him, how do you connect with your coworkers when you have such, you have the three letters behind your name. You're an intimidating guy because he's big, he's all these things. He's very accomplished. And he said, I intentionally play video games with them where I'm the worst player. And by doing that, that gives them an opportunity to teach me, to school me, and all of a sudden they see me in another context where I'm not the best. I'm not the one. And it's interesting because there's been studies on rats where when a bigger rat plays with a smaller rat, if the bigger rat beats the smaller rat more than 70% of the time, the smaller rat will stop playing with them. So they have to have this balance where the smaller rat feels like they have a chance, right? And in so many work settings, if you feel like you're just constantly inferior to the people above you, that they're always winning, it creates bad dynamics. And a case study of this was a guy named Michael, who was the CFO at a company. He was really struggling with, he was successful on paper, miserable on the inside, right? His home life was a wreck. He's struggling with alcoholism. And I think somebody's mic on. If you wouldn't mind just muting, that would be great. He described it to me as his coworkers were afraid of him because he viewed everything in terms of expenses. And so he was cutting people, and he started intentionally just playing more, playing with his kids, going on playful dates with his wife, trying to play with his coworkers. He said it completely changed everything for him. His coworkers stopped being afraid of him because he saw them. He started to see ways to build instead of tear down. He was able to get off alcohol by playing basketball regularly and actually starting to feel better. And he said, my wife was thinking about leaving me because I was in such a depressed state. This pulled me out, saved our marriage, saved my relationship with my kids. And so it has all these ripple benefits to doing it, right? To infusing play back into your life. But I mean, I see the biggest benefits as and the most potential as what this can do in the workplace. So a frequently asked question I get is, how do we get the boss on board? And the answer is it really depends on their nature. If they're a very analytical engineer type who wants to see numbers, I would encourage them to go to deliveringhappiness.com. There is an ROI calculator there where you can literally enter in how many employees do you have, how much are you making annual revenue, all this stuff. And it lays out like, look, it will increase your sales by this much. It will decrease your sick days by this much. All these things have been proven to boost the bottom line, because play in the boss's mind is always like, this is the enemy of productivity. It's actually the facilitator of productivity and innovation and people not wanting to leave the company and all these great things, right? If they're a more emotional, heart-centered individual, you appeal to their playful nature and you just show them the case studies. And so I'll share some more with you guys in just a bit, but that's a frequent question I get. And I think the easiest way is to hit them with, this is going to help the bottom line. It's not going to hurt it. So some further reflection for you all. Think about what stands in the way of you and your team feeling safe to play. What stands in the way of you feeling safe to play? And I'm trying to remember if I deleted this slide or not, but I will say I have surveyed thousands of people on why don't you play? And the number one answer is, I'm afraid of what people will think of me, which really boils down to, I'm afraid if I'm myself, people won't accept me. People won't love me anymore. And so this is why I think it's so important for leaders to lead by playing the fool. And then what activities would allow you to play the fool around your coworkers? What activities could you do that would allow you to be vulnerable? You would feel good about it. They would feel good about it. And it would allow you to create the joy bond that allows you to become coworkers that feel like playmates. That is the key. That is the next key to unleashing and unlocking creativity in the workplace. Creativity comes from people connecting disparate ideas with each other, not just individuals. Step 3 is to recognize the office's potential as a playground. So what do I mean by this? A quick story. There was a teacher in Texas who was teaching elementary school, and her kids had behavioral problems just like crazy, right? And they were struggling with bullying, breaking equipment, ADHD. She felt like she was just losing control. She wasn't able to get anything done. And so she started studying Finland, which is ranked the #1 country in the world in terms of education. And just looking at what do they do differently. And the main thing she noticed was, apart from, they don't emphasize results as much, right? They don't do as much testing. They effectively do no homework until they're teens. But what she really noticed was, wow, they have 4 times more recess than we do. They take 2 hours a day. We don't. We take less than 30 minutes a day. And so what she did was she quadrupled her class's recess time. And what happened was, almost instantly, every metric that she and parents cared about went up. Bullying stopped. Kids stopped misbehaving. They actually got more done. They were advanced faster, and the parents would compliment her because they would say, our kids are so well behaved. What are you guys doing during the day? Are you coaching them? No. We're letting them be human beings and recognizing that human beings need to blow off steam. And I am a firm believer that a lot of my theory is that a lot of the problems that we face in the modern workplace, such as bullying, this relentless micromanaging, this hyper emphasis on productivity, is a symptom of this bigger problem that we treat everything has to be all work and no play. And I think this is one of the biggest oversights we are making right now collectively as a society, both in work and school. Burnout was such a huge issue and continues to be in many industries. I talk with a lot of healthcare companies that face with burnout. And one of the simplest solutions to preventing burnout is to just step away long enough to prevent it from continuing. There's also, there's a real power in just having hobbies outside of work, doing things apart from work that are for your own enjoyment. In the book Range, David Epstein talks about there's roughly a 30 times higher rate of Nobel laureates doing hobbies than the next leading scientists, researchers, whatever, in their field. They're 30 times more likely to have hobbies such as acting, painting, whatever. And that bleeds into their work because everything's related, right? They find connections that weren't necessarily there. There's a great book called Why Greatness Cannot Be Planned, The Myth of the Objective, where these AI scientists did an experiment where they had these, they had this program that would generate 9 AI images that were all the same with very slight variations. And when you would click on one that you liked, it would generate 9 more with 9 slight variations. Is that clear? Does that make sense? And you could just keep clicking them and see what they generated. And they divided the users into 2 groups. One group, they said, we have an outcome we want you to get. We want you to make this image of a happy face or a motorcycle or whatever. And then the other group, they said, just have fun. Just do your thing. Let's see where it takes you. The group who had the outcome, their images were consistently terrible. The group that had no objective generated images like these. And they were astonished. And they realized this is how nature is. Nature doesn't have a desired end outcome. There's no incessant need for productivity. It just goes. It just does. And it's a similar way to operate in the workplace. So the 20% rule with Google, does anybody remember this? And they became well known for, it was about 10 years ago, where they could have 20% of their work week allocated to anything outside of Google. They could do whatever they wanted, right? They just had to do something. What came from this program? Gmail, Google AdSense, Google Maps, things that put them on the map. And yet they killed this program. Google AdSense came from, that's their business. That's their revenue. They killed 20% rule. Why? Marissa Mayer said, the dirty little secret to Google's 20% time, it's really 120% time. They still managed to creep it back to, you got to work 5 days a week. We want you to be productive. It was the result of this incessant need for everything to be productive, every waking moment to be productive. And this is the most harmful thing that stifles creativity and innovation, right? So do you want to know the top 5 proven ways to make your office more creative, by the way? I've looked at a bunch of the research, and there's proven ones to foster creativity that are really simple that you can implement. So the first one is walking meetings. Instead of sitting around, all you got to do is move your body. It's proven to generate up to 2 times more creative solutions when you're working on something creative. Just move around. Company outings during work. Notice the emphasis on during work. The worst thing that you can do is say, we have a company outing, it's on a Sunday. No. Don't do it. Cancel work. Company potlucks during work. Cancel the work, treat it like this, let the company potluck take place. Contests during work, something like who's got the cutest baby picture. And playful cues with no obligation to use them. This is, in the background is a picture of a company called Bad Robot. They're one of the most creative media production agencies in Hollywood, and their office is just filled with playful cues that you have no obligation to use, but you can totally use them. So if you want some inspiration, check out their offices, Pixar's offices. They've got some really nice ones. But the key is your environment shapes you so much. And so having these playful cues can trigger up and subtly communicate, hey, it is safe to play. So there's one more piece to the all work is play formula, apart from freedom, mastery, and connection. And it's recess. feeling the safety in knowing that you can step away from the work and trust that productivity will still be achieved and will most likely, in fact, be increased by the act of stepping away. No one comes down on you, right? At least I hope, for sleeping 8 hours a night, right? Like that increases your productivity. I'll tell a quick story about this. So the person in front is Erin Tyler. She's the most creative person I've ever met. If you look up Erin Tyler design, I just noticed my camera froze. There we go. So her career has been in graphic design. She's designed some of the most famous book covers, best-selling book covers. She's incredible. And I called her one night and said, "Hey, you want to hang out with us?" And she said, "Oh, there's no way. I'm working on a website for a client. Their deadline is tomorrow morning. I have to get this done. I'm looking at 8 hours of work in front of me. Zero chance I'm going to get it done, or zero chance I can hang out." And we said, "Well, why don't you come play mini golf with us?" And she said, "Did you not hear anything I just said? Did the phone cut out? What just happened?" And we finally convinced her to just take a break, come hang out and play mini golf. And at first she was like really stressed for the first couple holes. And then after, she kind of loosened up and started having fun. When we dropped her off later that night, she said, "You know what? I'll just email the client tomorrow. I'll tell him I can't hit the deadline. That'll be that." The next day she texted us and she said, "You guys, I got the website done in an hour and a half, and it was good." And that is a common occurrence when you're stuck on a problem, when you're stuck in creativity, is if you just step away, if you just take a break, you can get the creative outcome that you want. I mean, Einstein used to take naps and walks. Edison used to take naps, rely on naps for creativity. I think the DNA helix structure was realized in a dream. Recess matters. And I actually ran a recess group for professionals for a year in Austin, Texas. And I learned some really valuable lessons in the process. So here's my formula for the perfect recess for those who want to bring back recess in your life. Most important part is to detach from work. There's a concept called psychological detachment, and we live in a world where we can be connected 24/7, 365 to our work. You have to detach in order for recess to work. Get outside. We stare at flat screens and flat surfaces all day, and we evolved in fractals and with our feet on the ground. If you can get outside, get some fresh air, sunlight, it does wonders. Move your body. We sit still all day. Move. Invite a friend if you can. And ideally bring kids or dogs because they're the natural born players and they know how to play best, and they change everybody's energy and make it that much more fun. So that's the perfect recess. If you want to take a screenshot of it, you can. I know it's fairly obvious, but this was from rigorous testing of finding the perfect recess, and this is the formula. So some further reflection on how you can make the office more into a playground is to ask, what are you currently doing to signal that it is not okay to detach? It's not okay to detach from my work. What changes to your environment would make detaching easier? A simple thing that I use is a timer, where, I can just pick the time. As soon as it goes off, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go outside, walk around the block, then I'm back to it. What incentives could you offer to encourage hobbies or recess? One of my favorite examples of this is an agency in Denver called Full Contact. They pay their every employee $7,500 pre-tax to take a vacation. They can only use the money if they go on vacation and don't answer email and don't do any work. Those are their only conditions, and people love this rule. So what incentives could you offer to encourage either yourself or your team to do hobbies, take recess, take vacation? So that's step 3, is to recognize the office's potential as a playground. And that's really what I have seen, how to unlock creativity through the power of play. Remember, work is play. Your coworkers can be playmates. They're not a family, they're your team. And the office is a playground, or it can be. So if you want to grab my top play resources, you can go to this link, or I think that QR code should work, and just enter in your email. Later today or tomorrow, I'll send you my top play resources. Does anybody need, if somebody could post a link, that'd be a great help, and you can check it out in the chat. So I want to wrap up with a couple of quotes. I've always liked this quote from Eckhart Tolle. He said, "You'll realize the whole world of form is a game to be played and enjoyed. You're simply playing. Perhaps one day all humans will live like that, but we have to make a start. If we don't make a start now, that day will never come." It really starts with you. And this quote from Plato, who considered one of the greatest philosophers of all time, we model our universities, our higher education, after what he created. He said, "Man is God's plaything, and that is the best part of him. Therefore, every man and woman should live life accordingly and play the noblest games. What then is the right way of living? Life must be lived as play." So remember when you were a kid, when life was play, people were playmates, the world was a playground. It still is. It still can be. We have 2 lives, and the second begins when we realize we only have one. And so I'd encourage you to try it again, except this time, remember to play. Thank you all for coming to the presentation, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of the symposium.
Thank you. Thank you, Charlie. Can we give him a round of applause? Virtual applause everywhere.